Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our fourth cycle in 1991, talking about a movie on this episode. In this episode, we're talking about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I remember being very excited for this movie when it first came out. I saw it in theaters. I think it was between like this and The Rocketeer were like my two big movies from 1991 that I was able to see in theaters. Terminator 2 probably being the best movie of that year, and the one I definitely like the most out of the films that were released that year. But I didn't get to see it out in theaters, and I had to wait to see that on like VHS. Point Break, I think I saw on HBO or something like that. And we've covered those films on this series already. But I hadn't seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves in a very long time. I want to say maybe I watched it on Netflix like maybe 10 years ago at the earliest. So it may have been even before that. So I hadn't seen the movie in a very long time. It's not on any of the typical subscription-based streaming platforms right now, so I had to just watch it on Amazon. Did like the $3 rental or whatever it was. I had a lot of fun with it. I do think the movie is a little bit long. It could have done with some cuts. Apparently, there's an extended cut which I didn't see, which adds I think like another like 15 or so minutes. The movie is already close to 2.5 hours. It's like 2 hours 20 minutes or something, and I felt that was like pretty long. I think there was stuff that they could have cut out, but I still had a lot of fun with the movie. Reminded me of going to that movie. I remember like meeting up with my friends at a day camp. It was a camp that you would go to during the day. It wasn't a sleepaway camp or anything like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go see Robin Hood tonight. This was probably like the Friday or Saturday like that it opened, and they came along as well, and we all had a lot of fun with it. I remember, I think it was the end of 1991, maybe even if it was New Year's Eve. And my friend, I think the movie came out on like VHS in like October, and he maybe got the movie for Christmas, and we were watching it like New Year's Eve, going into 1992. So like a lot of fun. I have some notes here about the movie. We'll get to the plot. We'll discuss all that as well. So let me just get my notes open here. There we go. So Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, first released June 14th, 1991. The budget on this movie, it didn't get amazing reviews critically. They were kind of mixed, but it was very successful financially. So it cost between $48 and $60 million, and it ended up grossing $390 million. I think I was reading somewhere that it was like the second highest grossing movie of 1991, and I think the highest grossing may have been Terminator 2. I would have to double check and see on that. I do have notes here for Terminator 2, so let me actually just go and find those and see if that actually is the case. Let me see, King of Baseball, we already covered that. Reading your comic books. No, I don't know if I ever did any of the stuff on there for Terminator 2. So I don't know if it was. I'm assuming Terminator 2 was potentially the highest grossing movie of that year. But basically had a pretty low budget, between like at the most being $60 million, and it grossed $390 million. This is, I think, the first movie I saw with Morgan Freeman in it. And it also might be the first movie I had seen with Alan Rickman, because Alan Rickman at that point had done Die Hard and some other stuff, and I hadn't seen Die Hard yet. I wouldn't see Die Hard for a couple years after this, when I think we rented Die Hard or something like that. So definitely the first time I saw Morgan Freeman, potentially the first time I saw Alan Rickman. I think I had seen Kevin Costner maybe in like Field of Dreams or something by this point. I don't think I had seen Dances with Wolves, but I had seen like clips of it, or like the bits that they would show you on like award shows for when something is nominated. So a lot of Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, maybe this may have been my first movie with her as well. I know she was in The Abyss prior to this, but I don't remember if I saw The Abyss before seeing Robin Hood. So I don't really recall that. Song that came out of this movie, Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You, kind of all over like the radio, MTV that summer. I think it was nominated for an Academy Award for this film. I don't think it won, but it did win a Grammy for like a song for a visual medium, which would have been like the music video for this, or it was attached to this film. And that song ended up becoming one of his like most like well-known songs. Alan Rickman also won a BAFTA for this award for supporting actor. If we're gonna be honest, I think the VIP in this movie is Alan Rickman. He just chews the scenery like every scene he's in. He's over the top. It's kind of everything I remember about this movie is his performance. Like I'm gonna like cut his heart out with a spoon. And then when he gets cut, he's like now sew and keep the stitches small. His delivery is just incredible, and his reveal in the kind of beginning of the film is incredible. We'll get to the reveal a little bit later, but he's got like this like mask on, and he just like pulls it off very slowly, and just that reveal of him going up to like Loxley's castle with his like troops is really good. But yeah, Alan Rickman is like probably in my opinion the VIP of the movie. Um, see here. Film had a darker tone to the kind of Robin Hood material that had been released prior to it. In my research, it was saying the writer Paul Dosham kind of did not want to do the same kind of Robin Hood movie. Like the kind of typical one was the Errol Flynn style, like the Adventures of Robin Hood, or even like the Disney Robin Hood, which I think kind of I don't know if they all kind of come from the Errol Flynn one, and that one kind of inspires all of them. But I feel like that's kind of like traditionally what you think of when you think of Robin Hood is the like Errol Flynn film and things like that. And I also think I'm gonna have to like look this up, but let me just see. Was it called Cupid? Cupid from Star Trek also is a related to Robin Hood, and I think that also showed up in 1991 as well. Yeah, April 1991. So that episode of Star Trek by a few months kind of beat this version of Robin Hood to the screen, even though it was a TV show. But that episode, it was like also the traditional style Robin Hood, where the Next Generation crew gets Q is messing with them and puts them in a well, I don't want to say it's a simulation, but basically transports them to a recreation of like Nottingham and Sherwood Forest, where Picard is in the role of Robin Hood, and you have Riker as Little John, Worf as Will Scarlet, Data as Friar Tuck, and so on. It's a very silly episode, but it just works so well because the actors just kind of commit to it, and it works as far as like Hughes just snaps his fingers and they're there. So it was just kind of funny that came out the same year that this movie came out. But the Cupid is more done in the traditional style. The Kevin Costner Prince of Thieves is much darker, much more violent. I think they changed the story up a little bit to where Robin of Loxley is kind of a rich kid initially, goes off to the Crusades, kind of against his dad's wishes, gets captured, comes back, and then kind of becomes more of the Robin Hood that we kind of associate with the story. But yeah, definitely they wanted a different kind of tone to it. It's definitely more violent. It's not like graphically violent because it's a PG-13, but you definitely can tell it's more violent than like the Errol Flynn film and the other kind of other Robin Hood materials. Kevin Costner apparently initially turned the script down to this until he realized that Kevin Reynolds was directing it, or was told that Kevin Reynolds was directing it. So he really wanted to work. He wanted to work with Kevin Reynolds, and Kevin Reynolds he initially didn't want to do it, and then when it was revealed that Kevin Reynolds was directing, Kevin Costner was like, "Okay, I'll do it." Apparently, Kevin Costner also wanted to have an accent in this film. It's one of the weird things I noticed that like basically every other character in the film has an accent of some kind, except for Kevin Costner. And I think that was done intentionally. The director was like, well, I don't want him to, the movie's going to focus on him a lot. I don't want him to have an accent that is, like distracting, or maybe it is like inconsistent throughout the film. Like Christian Slater's in this movie as well, and he tries to put on an accent. And there's one scene where you definitely hear him slip up, and he just speaks with his natural kind of like, I don't exactly know how to describe Christian Slater's like cadence, but it's kind of almost like Jack Nicholson, but it's like I don't know. There's a scene where they're like planning an attack, like Will Scarlet eventually like gets captured, and I think his like say goes to Sheriff Nottingham. He's like, hey, like I'll betray Robin Hood to get like free, and he goes, finds Robin, basically tells him what's going on, and then they're devising their kind of like the rescue. And for a brief second, you just hear Christian Slater's like natural, like speaking voice. It's kind of funny. But yeah, everybody has an accent. Morgan Freeman's character has an accent. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's character actually has an accent, like as a Christian Slater tries to throw on an accent. Of course, the British actors and actresses that are in here have their natural British accents, and I think Alan Rickman even is like dialing his up just a little bit for this film because like he's definitely my favorite part of this film. But basically, everybody has an accent but Kevin Costner. All right, so that does it for the notes. We're now going to get into the kind of just basic plot wrap up of this film. So, beginning has kind of like these tapestries that are kind of like it's kind of a cool way to introduce a movie. And they don't really do opening credits like this anymore. We actually have kind of all the key players are right up. Usually, it just goes right into the action. Like a Marvel movie will might show the Marvel logo and then jump right into it. Um, but a lot of these movies from the '90s actually would say, like it would say this studio presents this film by this director, and it's like starring Kevin Costner. And it'll be like Morgan Freeman. Then it's like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and then it goes through all of the main like supporting actors. It goes through like the writers, the producers, all that kind of stuff. The casting directors, they all kind of got credits at the beginning of the movie, and I think we've kind of have switched that to where now movies are, it's just right into the action. Maybe they feel like just having the credits there kind of breaks the immersion a little bit, which I can kind of see. But anyway, we get this tapestry that kind of shows all the credits, and then it goes to a scene, black screen with white text explaining the Crusades, and it cuts to Jerusalem where there is a prison. You see one guy get his hand cut off, and then you have Robin Hood in there, Robin Loxley. He wasn't going by Robin Hood at the time, but he is. They're going to cut off some prisoner's hand, and Robin's like, no, like, oh, I'm the one that stole the bread, like, cut my hand off. Even though the guy's like, but it wasn't you, it wasn't you. And that's kind of his friend, I think. They go to, like, cut his hand off, and they basically pull the guy in front of them. The guy there's a fight in the prison. They rescue Azim. I think it's Azim is Morgan Freeman's character. And they escape through the catacombs. I think Robin's friend gets shot by an arrow, gets killed. And then Azim is like, I owe a life debt to you now, so I will protect you. So I basically go where you go. And he's like, well, I absolve you of your thing. And he's like, nah, you can't do it like that. So then they flee to England. It cuts back to, I don't exactly know the timeline because I don't know if like they're on their way back as this is happening. But Robin's father is writing a letter. I forget who the letter's to. He's like, hey, is like Robin still angry at me? Does he bear me any ill will? Like he's like, I feel bad that he like left under these like circumstances, and his assistant comes in and is like, hey, like this guy says there's men on horses coming, and then Robin's father, played by Brian Blessed, goes out to greet them, and this is when we get Alan Rickman's introduction, and the castle's surrounded in a circle by all like his like minions basically, and he pulls his mask down, just a great reveal for Alan Rickman's character, and he's like Loxley, like he's like join us, and then basically he's like, nah, I'm not gonna join you, charges out into the battlefield and gets killed. It's kind of a silly scene because you just see him pull his sword. The horse like goes down this ramp, and then he immediately just gets surrounded. They don't even have any shots of him actually like getting any of these minions killed, which would have been kind of cool. But they basically take that back. Robin and Azim they get back to England. He's like kissing the beach and stuff like that. They are then just kind of walking. They're trying to get back to Robin's castle or Loxley's castle, and Azim is like, "What way is east?" So he can pray. And then at this point, Guy of Gisborne his character gets revealed, and they're chasing a kid that killed one of the sheriff's deer, and he hides in a tree, and Robin takes them out, and then Guy of Gisborne is like, "Hey, like," he's like, "This is like not like your fight. Like, don't get involved." But then he kind of heads off. And I think he reports to the sheriff of Nottingham. He's like, hey, like, he's like, I lost some troops today because of, like this Loxley guy is back. And then he's like, oh, Loxley's back. He's like, all right. And then eventually they go to Loxley's castle, find this burned down. The assistant Duncan is there, and his eyes have been shown shut. So they take him. They eventually in prison, he basically made his friend a promise to like look after Marion. So they try to find her. They go to her house or her castle. She's there, but she's like in disguise as like a guard or something. She fights with Robin Hood briefly, and then what are they? The guards for like basically the sheriff of Nottingham's guards come back up. They attack, and Robin Hood and Azim steal some horses. And I don't know if this is like exactly when he gets killed, when Guy Gisborne gets killed, but like basically he reports back to the sheriff of Nottingham. He's like, hey, like we screwed up again. He's like, Robin got away, and they're in the forest now because they eventually get into Sherwood Forest. And there's like a great line where they're like, well, we can't go to the, I think it's Robin and someone else are like, well, we can't go to the forest because it's haunted. And the line is, well, he's like, we either take our chances with the ghosts or we become ghosts ourselves, which I thought was really cool. But basically, Alan Rickman like stabs Guy Gisborne for like his incompetence or his insubordination. They go into the forest. They meet up with Little John and his crew. They do the classic stick fighting, which is or not mean, but parried very well in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Apparently, from what I was reading, I think somewhere else, didn't write in the notes, but I think Carrie Elwes was actually approached to be in this movie. Initially, turned it down, but then eventually ended up playing Robin Hood in the parody. By the parody, they're fighting with the sticks, and the sticks get smaller and smaller. It's a great parody. But he fights with Little John, and they eventually become friends. They kind of start living in the forest. And then this is when they start becoming the classic kind of Robin Hood story of, steal from the rich, give from the poor. They like ambush like the gold deliveries to take the money. They kind of distribute it amongst like the poor, the same with like food and things like that. Robin eventually goes to the castle and then gets into a kind of a brief fight with the sheriff of Nottingham, and I think like slices him. And I forget the exact line, but he's trying to escape. And he's like, "You're a dead man, Locksley," and then he's like, "Well, then it begins," or something like that. And that's kind of like when the sheriff is now like, okay, so Guy Gisborne hasn't been killed at this point, so I think like he declares war against Robin Hood, and then I think like they eventually fail to capture him again, which is then when Guy Gisborne comes back, and I don't think he expects to get killed by the sheriff, but he's like, yeah, we like screwed up, we lost some men, and then he's like. They're like building like he's like Spanish steel. This is really good stuff. And he stabs with it. And he's like, this is good steel. But after that, Marion eventually goes out there as well and sees Robin Hood, kind of sees how they're living, and kind of is like now kind of on board with what he's doing. The sheriff of Nottingham wants to marry her and stuff like that. Also, I haven't really mentioned Mortiana, I think is the witch. And I don't know if that character shows up in the other Robin Hood stories or not. But she's kind of like, she can kind of see the future. She rolls bones as dice to like predict stuff. And she has like visions of Morgan Freeman's character and the death of those two characters and things like that. So she is kind of like his like scribe, maybe not a scribe necessarily, but like his seer. Like she sees the future for the sheriff and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, I forget. So Duncan, so they go to Locksley, or they go to Marion's house, I think, to capture her. They get her captured, and Duncan, the blind servant or assistant to Robin's father, is there, and basically like gets on a horse, completely blinded. This is kind of unrealistic, but he gets on the horse, and it just guides him back to Sherwood Forest. However, they're followed, and then there is a huge assault on their camp. It gets completely burned down. Some of them get captured. And that's when, like I said, Will Scarlet gets captured. I think the kid that was in the tree, like Wolf or whatever his name is, gets captured. And they then come to an agreement with Will Scarlet. Will Scarlet's like, yeah, I'll lead you to him. Like he's like, oh, like he's been nothing but a problem for me. And he eventually goes back to there and he explains what's going on. They stage a rescue mission to get everybody back out. They like basically like bring in, there's like a montage where they have like gunpowder and like they're building more weapons and they are in disguises. They get into the gates and things like that, and they're about to execute the kind of the merry men that they have captured. Like Wolf, I think Will Scarlet. Well, Will Scarlet goes back with them, and then Will Scarlet gets like caught again, and he's about to get his head get beheaded on one of the explosive barrels that Morgan Freeman's character has built. So a huge fight ensues. They get rescued. There is a part where Robin and Azim are on a catapult, and I think this is their one free F-bomb. They get on a catapult, they launch it over the castle walls, And Christian Slater as Will Scarlet is like, well, F me, they cleared it. And because you see him fly over the wall. He then starts fighting with the Sheriff of Nottingham. This is Robin Hood doing this. Azim runs into the witch. He ends up like stabbing her with like a spear. A good fight like between Robin and the sheriff. Basically, like Sheriff of Nottingham has the upper hand, but Marion had given Robin Hood this dagger earlier in the film. It was a dagger that was initially given to her by the Sheriff of Nottingham, like a jewel encrusted dagger. And Robin Hood has a sword, so like Sheriff of Nottingham is gonna swing over him, and Robin Hood just takes the sword, like the knife, and just is like stabs it up at him. And then I think like everything seems all is well, but then Morgiana shows back up, and I think she gets flung out of a window. And then the film has a wedding. King Richard has returned from the Crusades, played by Sean Connery, and that's basically the end of the film. It's still a lot of fun. I can definitely see where some of the negative reviews came from. I definitely feel it was a little bit long. I would have maybe trimmed up some of the stuff in Sherwood Forest, like make some of those montages shorter. Oh yeah, Friar Tuck has a great line when the guy's like, he's like, "I'll help you pack your bags." He's like, "Here's 10 silver to pay the devil when you get to hell," and he kicks him out of a window. So just it's a fun movie, but there definitely is some issues with it. Like I think the length is probably my biggest one, and then apparently the extended edition is even longer than that. But I remember having a lot of fun with this movie when it came out in theaters, and then I remember like watching it with friends in like the early '90s. Like I said, New Year's Eve 1991, going into 1992, we watched it. I don't think we finished it, but watched a bunch of it. And then I want to say it's been maybe at least 10 years since I probably have seen it, maybe longer than that, maybe even 14 years. But it's been a while, and I had a lot of fun watching this. I had to rent it on Amazon, so it wasn't streaming on one of the monthly like subscription services. It was just a rental, but had a lot of fun with it. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back again in a few days doing another computer or video game. No idea what that's going to be just yet, but we'll be back with that. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.